All right, hello Cancer. Welcome to Catalyst Energies and welcome to your full moon astrology forecast, where we look at the major themes of the lunar cycle between the full moon that was exact yesterday on the 16th of February, all the way up to the new moon in Pisces that will be on March 2nd, 2022. So welcome back, everyone. Welcome if you're new to the channel. Quick announcement about this series in particular, these bi-monthly astrology forecasts by sign. They will be moving to a subscriber-only platform after this particular batch. So if you find these videos helpful and they are a part of your own learning module for astrology, whatever the value is to you, it's only going to be available to those who are members on Subscribestar. There's a link in the description box below. It's $3 a month. And then you can have access to all of this content and also to bi-weekly Starseed meetups that is going to provide a space for people to meet and talk and ask questions in real time and discuss certain concepts and ideas and events, in a more concentrated space, right? So that's going to be available too. So I just wanted to let you know that before we jump into the astrology. So, Cancer, the nature of who you've been and who you are in relationship of any kind of interpersonal relationship has been going through quite the demolition in the last couple of years. In the last many years, really, I'd say decade plus, since Pluto came into Capricorn, which is your 7th house. So there's already been an overhaul of this because as a Cancer person, boundaries are a thing for you. They are a concept that is very near and dear and close to who you are. And when you're in relationship, it is the protector and provider role that comes out of you. And while that is incredibly valuable and at an organic level will represent natural law and the cohesiveness of natural law and mechanics, it also at a socio-political level or even at a family level or even at a relational level can be very binding and limiting as a means to offer protection and containment. As a Cancer person, you want to protect, you want to mother, you want to smother, and you also there is a need for establishing those strong familial bonds as a means to do that. So the overarching Capricornian matrix that has been undergoing its demolition for years now has been having a real impact on the way that you show up in relationship. And now is the time where all of that demolition, all of that destruction, all of the Plutonian powerful transformation that has been initiated is about to not only finally wipe away and release all the dead weight of it that needs to go, but also to a balancing of accounts, a recompense in this realm that is going to directly impact, and swell your understanding at a fundamentally spiritual level with Neptune. So we're talking about Venus and Mars together at the time of this full moon, which is in the 2nd and 8th house for you. But this feels like because of the nature of the relational aspect going through such change because of Capricorn being your 7th house, Cancer, it is the traveling together of Venus and Mars, their conjunction, and then there's soon their relationship to Neptune is really a important part of this conversation. There's been enough information leading us up to this full moon that I'm leaving links in the description box for the Aquarius new moon for you that you can go back over or listen to for the first time, and the Pleiadian revival, because this full moon, as you can see, is also a grand square, also all galactic degrees, all starseed markings surrounding it. So needless to say, Cancer, it is really about this full moon highlighted if you're the investments you have really invested yourself in with the sun in Aquarius during this time, and especially too with Saturn here, which does rule your seventh house. So also a very strong paternal authoritative presence in the realm of business resources, shared resources in your marriage. It's the hunger to have more that is really felt in the eighth house, and it is the shadow that we eventually have to acknowledge, that we discover in the eighth house. So to have Saturn here is definitely a confining presence and does not allow for a lot of flexibility, but it also gives us, like I said, a sense of authority and stability in an area that is oftentimes very easy to get lost in. So when the sun has been moving through this area the last couple of weeks, and this is where the new moon was in this area, will your investments, will the space between your relationships, the emotional space, the abyss of your own feelings, right? And your hunger to know more, your hunger to investigate, to get to the bottom of things, and sharing. The eighth house is about shared resources, giving yourself over, especially with the sun, giving yourself over to something that you know will create something more than yourself, right? And so this is the power that really drives society, is the eighth house. And this is also where, the power dynamics are generated, regardless of, it's directly related to the structure and form of the relationship to begin with, which is what has been impacted for so long now for the Cancer person in who they are in their relationship. So you've invested a lot of yourself in the last couple of weeks in the resources that are to come from your communion and your cooperation and your urge to get to more value in your relationships. And this full moon was an opportunity to see if it can really truly hold, if those investments, if that space of power is truly capable of holding the maximum amount of resources you have to offer at an emotional level. And since the moon is your ruling body, Cancer, this is really, the moon transits really affect you and are very close to you. So because the sun in the eighth house is a lot of will to sacrifice oneself. So you've given yourself over to this investment, whatever it is, the power dynamics, the profit of a business, the depth psychology, like giving over yourselves to the journey to the bottom of who you are, so that you can really see yourself for who you are, right? To look in the mirror of your soul. And now, whatever that is, whatever that experience is going to, and the amount of energy and resources in particular that it can hold, it's going to matter. It's going to matter when the new moon comes around, because Mercury and Saturn will come together in this realm, and you will need to use your mind and really in a very disciplined, authoritative, and very stable and strong way in order to do some damage control in an area that may have nothing to do with you, but it is still part of your relationships, right? It's still part of your relationships. And that damage control may come actually from when these two come to a point of recompense or a balancing of accounts that, yes, is going to release a lot of resources into the belief systems and the value system as a whole, right? The big picture, especially the spiritual big picture, and to give yourself over to that. It's the realm of the power dynamics that is going to need the damage control from a very pragmatic and very stabilized mind at the time of the new moon. And so we'll look at that as we go through. So we've talked about the new moon is, your own actual resources are your investments and the power in your relationships and the bonds in these cooperative efforts that you have given yourself over to. Will they be able to store the full amount of resources that you have at your disposal emotionally, Cancer? And this is the same time that Venus and Mars are in their conjunction and releasing from some sort of repression, some sort of limiting structure that finally frees us to create something new. And it's the coming together of the masculine and feminine in the seventh house that allows. So maybe there is a very dramatic sacred union in your actual relationships, Cancer, that allowed for you to let go of the binding and limiting stories and start to move forward in creating a new type of relationship. And that's beautiful. And like I said, is going to, when that energy is balanced out, it's going to sextile Neptune. Let's look at this time frame. But there's also going to be a need to do, like I said, to be aware that damage control is going to be necessary moving forward, because these resources will be given over to the belief system and the alchemy itself, right? But it's going to, we're going to have to also deal with, all of us, the third quarter moon squaring the sun. So there may be a full illumination and culmination with the full moon, but we are tested with what we have discovered or experienced emotionally at that time with the quarter moons. This is where actual crisis usually comes up. Something is like a crisis point. And for Cancers, it's, gathering a lot of inner strength is very easy in Moon in Sagittarius. And this particular degree is something I know a lot about because it's my natal sun is 5 to 6 degrees Sag. And it's about group solidarity, working together as a team, and playing the game as a means to learn to work together as a team. It's about the big picture and understanding, and that starts with learning how to actually work together. And there can be a lot of inner strength gathered from that place, and that's going to come out of the everyday activity of the Cancer person or their service work that they're oriented to, and especially the sensitivity to that. This is also about energetic hygiene, with the moon in the 6th house, and self-care, mental health self-care, and also I would say even astral hygiene and emotional organization, right? And emotional discipline. And it's gonna, I feel like the Cancer person is going to really draw in inner strength from the action of working together as a group. That practice is good for the Cancer person in their personal life. And that's a great thing. But the square to the sun is the challenge to, it's the challenge from the full moon, which is, the 2nd house is your resources. The 6th house is what you do with them. And while you are feeling into that process, the sun in your 9th house is like, I am identifying with these belief systems. It's not an experience of acting. It's an experience of being one with the collective value system. And that is a surrender rather than an action, even an emotional action. So that square is really going to be a challenge. But since, again, the moon is so close to you, Cancer, that you're really going to feel it a lot more, I feel like. And align with and identify yourself with this. But it'll be a crisis point. It won't be the full emotional picture because it's only that you only see half of the moon with the sun. So there's something missing out of this equation that is incomplete. And that's where the crisis, because we won't really know, or we kind of know, but not fully know what's missing. What do we pay attention to? What are we conscious of? This is the 3rd quarter moon. At the same time, both Mars and Venus in turn, like I said, will sextile Neptune over here in your 9th house. And so while there is something off about like your everyday, your routine and what you're doing and your service work and your disciplines, there's something aspects of your relationship as a whole, and the form of your relationships is going to rebalance as a result of these two traveling together. And that rebalancing, that recompense is a direct investment into a swell of expansion, spirit, and spiritual diffusion, humanitarian diffusion into belief systems and to the bigger picture, right? This is something getting let go of, an old story about who you've been in your relationships that is you're being freed from in a very accessible way. Mars and Venus represent they're very easy experiences to connect to. Divine masculine, divine feminine, incarnate, right? The seed in the soil, our action and our attraction. So this is really, really beautiful, and I think is going to renew a lot of your, I don't want to say faith, because that's more of an eighth house thing. It's going to renew a lot more of your belief and the meaning and understanding and wisdom that you are part of, and that gives you the meaning to actually reach your goals. Now, this is really important because reaching your goals has been the area of sticking point for Cancer, because Chiron's in your 10th house of your public life and your career and your goals and your ambitions, right? And the systems that you contribute to creating as a whole. There is, I mean, a lot of guilt for even just being oneself at all in this realm and naturally expressing oneself in this way. I feel like Cancer, I feel like Cancer is actually so much more predisposed to be leading than anyone else in some ways, or providing, right? I mean, because, you know, Capricorn is traditionally the 10th house. So when you are naturally yourself, you are fulfilling your goals in a lot of ways, which is providing and protecting and contributing to something more than yourself. But there's something with Chiron that's consistent and will continue to challenge you about, you know, stepping into your power, basically, and going back into what? Old stories. Listen to that. So Mercury at this point, while the moon is in a square to the sun, while these two are in a sextile to Neptune, Mercury is in a sextile to Chiron. And so finding some stillness in the mind amongst a very disruptive wave function in the space of your relationships, right? The feeling space of your relationships, perhaps in your in the actual shared resources themselves, in that space of the power dynamics. If you can find some stillness in that space, which would require probably some serious meditation, maybe some shamanic journeying of some sort, even as far as maybe some sort of plant medicine, but to find the stillness of the mind in that realm in order to access inspiration is going to have a very liberating impact on the old stories that you are still aligning with in terms of, you know, your contribution to society, what your mission is, your goals, your ambitions, right? Instead of just going forward and following your instinct, something is overlaid that is establishing shame and guilt for just being yourself. There's something in the space between your relationships that, if you can calm the mind, will be able to actually address. And again, a sextile is an investment, a harmonious connection, but it requires investment. And this investment from your actual realm of profit, right, be it energetic or financial, you can distribute to or invest into your goals. And specifically, too, to help wipe away some of these old ideas, right, because you're getting direct inspiration and not necessarily taking in, you know, the overlay of somebody else's story. But that requires, again, that you have to find this stillness of your mind. While that, right after that, then the stillness goes away almost immediately, because then the moon comes out of Mercury comes out of post-retrograde shadow, right? New territory now for the mind in Aquarius. So very scientifically oriented, receiving the signal in full, is receiving the signal that is disjointed and glitching constantly, which is Uranus and Taurus, right? And so it's going to square Mercury, and immediately I feel like the mental this mental stillness that we will have immediately starts getting disturbed again by the shifting landscape of Uranus and Taurus, and will really provide a challenge to our mind to find a natural pattern here, or be able to cognize an actual progression, because of the fact that there is just like, it's always shifting. Like, it doesn't seem like there's a pattern in society, and that's going to disrupt your ability to be very objective in a world that is very feeling oriented and not objective, which is the 8th house. So remember that too. Society as a whole for you, the social environment is constantly in flux for the Cancer person because of Uranus here. And this is just another chance to feel into the discomfort and maybe find an even more still place while society is just shifting all around you, or is just never stable. It doesn't mean that the power you're generating within you, within your relationships, within even that social contract, you can still find a pattern of natural progression, even and in fact, I think because of the square, it's going to be a challenge you can confront. So, and then new territory, right? New mental territory in the realm of the subconscious and the occult, and the space of power in your relationships and your investments, right? And the resources that are generated as a result of our relationships. And Cancer, this is what you're all about, is relationships, because you in yourself, it is about the feels of the tight bonds, and that really characterizes you. So as we move to the new moon, which is going to be in Pisces, the new moon is, so this is very relevant to you, Cancer, because not only is the new moon in Pisces, it's a Sirian starseed marking, and we know that Sirius is in the sign of Cancer, in the zodiacal sign of Cancer. Black moon Lilith, right? Speaking of the moon, black moon Lilith, which is even deeper and more permanent and more infinite than even the moon, which is, the moon is our own feels, right? Our own emotional landscape that is directly tied to us on this planet. Black moon Lilith is a space. It's a space, but it's still a fixed space relative to the position of the Earth and the orbit of the moon, actually. So there's always this space that connects us to something deeper and infinite at the void or the darkness or the space, and that's Black moon Lilith. And so this will be in conjunction with Sirius in your first house at this new moon. This is a very powerful new moon, and you are in a position, Cancer, with this new moon conjunct Jupiter in your 9th house. I mean, to really step into, a symbolic spiritual role, to set intention to develop yourself as this symbol over the course of March mostly, and to have a symbolic a representative there, which is Jupiter. But also it's an avatar. It's a Piscean avatar, which is the Christ avatar. So we're talking about healing. We're talking about compassion, forgiveness, unconditional love, right? You really have the capacity to set intentions of growth and development, and you have a lot of representation, because Jupiter's here, to step into this shamanic, wise role and be a symbol for other people in terms of a religion or a doctrine or a belief system, or even just advanced training. The 9th house is foreign travel and advanced training and higher education too. So you can become an actual professor or a teacher, a spiritual teacher, just by virtue of being yourself and aligning with all of these potentials. And so Sirian starseeds are the shamans. They're the energy workers. And Cancer people, especially if you have Sirian starseed markings and you're a Cancer person, I mean, you're really just going to tap into this part of yourself with this new moon as a means to be a spiritual symbol for the people in your life. And there will need to be damage control when Mercury and Saturn come together at this very same time in this area. And again, this has a lot to do with did you, were your investments going to yield the resources? Are your resources able to be held by the communal relationships, the structures that hold your resources and generate more? There is going to be some damage control, but I think it's a function of a rebalance of relationships. So it may be kind of rocky, Cancer, for the relationships in your life and you in those relationships. That is what's changing, not so much the other people, but what you'll find is the relationship changes. And what you generated in those relationships, there is going to need to be some damage control, but there is a very strong mental, mature, and a very authoritative mental perspective or power here that is able to gather all the resources of that situation in order to put out a forest fire in some ways. So that's happening at the same time as this new moon in March, which also brings Uranus involved. And so society may not be very stable and may be glitching, right? The actual social environment may be infinite possibilities in front of you that you can't really settle on. But it's this very Syrian new moon, the avatar role, the consecrated symbol that can be an example for other people walking in those same footsteps. I mean, in the ninth house, this is very much a spiritual teacher, right? A very much like some sort of wisdom teacher or a guide, a shamanic guide in some ways. And really a guide that's going to go into the battle with people and show them the way and show them how to manage this space. And all you have to do is allow for the deepest connection that you can find within yourself to just, stabilize that, right? This is serious. All the codes are there, Cancer. And if you have Syrian starseed markings, I mean, your time is definitely coming in terms of a spiritual position of leadership, just by being yourself. So, but things about your relationships have had to change, and now's the time that they are really starting to become more palpable to your everyday life. And yes, society is not stable for you, but it's also the area of your soul's evolution. And so this right here, this new moon that we're going to come into and have working throughout the entire month of March is just the beginning of investment into your transformation or this may not be very stable, but finding your role within the doctrines or the value system as some sort of spiritual leader or guide or shaman in some way is going to allow you to find some stability amongst a constantly changing social environment. And that's really what you can be a symbol of for people so that they also can find some stability maybe where there isn't any or doesn't seem like there is any, or be an example, a spiritual example, right, of what is possible and what we can accomplish when we are together. So Cancer, you just really, and I say this with everybody, just be yourself. But I think I think it will be a little dicey with the relationship aspect because it's those stories that are a big part of holding you back from stepping into a role that is a guardian for a much different type of relationship. And until the story about what that means to you has been allowed to finally change and initiate new growth, I think that it's been, not really, I think people have just been kind of like, well, what am I doing? Right? Like and a lot of that is Chiron every time, like saying, no, you should do this, or here, you have to heal other people before you can truly be yourself, or, all this other, all these things in your professional life or your career, your goals, right? Your goals have really been suffering because of Chiron. And now I think what you see is that there's all the astrology is just so so much assisting us into letting go of these old stories so we can start coming into the roles that we want to play and we meant to play when we came here in the first place. So a good way to see how this works for you personally is actually to, schedule your own starseed reading or your own natal chart reading. So what a great segue into the end of this video, because, you can book a reading or see what my services are by going to my website, which is in the description box below. You can just link right to it. And of course, if you want to continue to get this type of content, you would click on the link to Subscribestar and subscribe to Catalyst Energies for $3 a month, so you can continue to get this this type of astrology content and be able to start tracking your own chart and living it, basically, by way of understanding how to read the chart through these particular forecasts, and to just get an idea what to expect. And I share with you what comes through me. So Cancer, until next time, stay golden. You are definitely, I can feel the challenge for relationships for you, and also Gemini during this time. So I'm with you. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need support, if you have questions, drop some comments. If you want to get a dialogue started, Telegram, we have a great chat function over there. So that's a place where we can all come together. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves, Cancer, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.